Hey guys, how's it going? Good. Just curious how many of you guys are developers? Nice. Okay. My name is Gloria. I lead developer relations at Versatus. Thank you, Derek, and the Restaking Cloud team for giving me an opportunity to present a little bit more about what we're building. So I might be presenting something that is, maybe a refresher from all the MEV and intent talks you guys have had today. Versatus is a peer-to-peer web services provider that's hyper-focused on delivering the best developer experience. Our mission is to not only onboard the next million developers, but also sustain them in order to scale utility in the Web3 ecosystem. So our end vision is to be the decentralized AWS of Web3 to really accelerate that movement towards data democratization and universal access to a decentralized web. So we have four core services. There's like way too much ground to cover with these services, so I'll be focused on the first one being the Versatus Laser. It stands for Language Agnostic Stateless Rollups. The team is currently heads down building this right now, which is why the founder, Andrew Smith, can't be with us today, but he definitely says hi. So what is a Versatus Laser? So it refers to a language agnostic stateless rollup. So there are two components to this, right? So the first half being language agnostic, we're talking about language agnostic smart contracts. So this allows developers, regardless of whether you have a Web 2 or Web 3 background, to build smart contracts and decentralized applications very frictionlessly without having to learn something like Solidity or Rust or have to undergo that steep Web3 learning curve. And also you can deploy your smart contract on any chain of choice. So this is very high level, the architecture that will enable the smart contracts to be built in whatever language. So we have language runtime. So those are like software infrastructure to support whatever language is able to execute well. And then you have our app-specific Nano runtime, which just translates to very lightweight infrastructure to help the efficiency aspect. And then you have hardware and software virtualization that just helps like the portability aspect of being able to interact with various chains that also have decentralized architecture. So moving on to the second part of what Laser entails, it includes the stateless rollup component. So this is enabled by something that is novel to the Versatus technology called the executable oracle. So at a very high level, the impact of this is it operates as probably the rollups that you guys are familiar with that takes computation off-chain and then brings the settlement on-chain to help with the bloating, the latency and throughput on the base settlement layer. But with the Versatus stateless rollup, it also enables interoperability and most importantly, the best, most flexible developer experience. So it is quite complex and technical how this executable oracle works, but essentially the executable oracle will be deployed on whichever blockchain, right? So let's take Ethereum, for example. So the executable oracle will be deployed on the execution layer for Ethereum. And then it basically tells the Versatus network, like, hey, you guys are able to accept instructions from the Ethereum blockchain, right? So then it also starts and ignites that roll-up process of taking, the relevant state data off-chain to be executed on the Versatus network. But in contrary to other rollups where they actually maintain that state data on their layer, we're a pure execution environment, going back to that very lightweight architecture that enables all this scalability and efficiency through our particular mechanism. We don't maintain any of that state data. We just do the computation and then send those verifiable results back to the settlement layer. In this case, it would be Ethereum. So that's kind of how very holistically the stateless rollup interacts with the smart contracts that are deployed on Versatus. And I know I went over some of the underlying architecture that allows more interoperability, scalability, and flexibility, whether you are a developer or an ecosystem. But at Versatus, we definitely strive to be data-driven and strategy-driven. So, and while we have, unique value propositions to different communities, whether you are a developer or you're an ecosystem, we have overwhelming feedback from, all these communities that have, spoken with us about, our tech stack and brainstormed ways to partner on a ecosystem level, including Restaking Cloud. We are discussing being an ecosystem design partner with them, which is super great. And in terms of research and being data driven, we have a survey that was sent out to 1,000 developers that were both a mix of developers who have never built in Web3 and then developers who have tried Web3, but it hasn't stuck. And the feedback from these developers were saying if they would be way more likely to build in Web3 if they were given the familiar environment, tooling, and resources that Versatus provides. And then as from an ecosystem standpoint, we are in talks with ecosystems with really great, strong developer communities to also, push the boundaries of what developers are able to build. So going off of, the benefits that we provide to both developers and the ecosystem communities, you really are, at Versatus, we're able to provide a solution, whether it's through our stateless rollup mechanism, it's helping your ecosystem scale as you're able to have off-chain compute and on-chain settlement in order to help your data availability layer, which helps, on a transaction level. That also translates to, less fees and avoiding, a lot of congestion on the base layer. Also, from an ecosystem standpoint, you're sharing a very limited developer talent pool that also translates to limited users, right? And then as for developers, with Versatus, you don't have to undergo, like a whole learning process of learning like Solidity and Rest that are pretty niche today, that you can only work in specific ecosystems, and you don't want to get like pigeonholed into, only working for Ethereum or Solana or Aptos or you name it. So we talked about the valuable aspects that our chain can bring both developers and ecosystems, but we haven't explained why now. We're actually experiencing a really sad developer exodus. You might have noticed there's just less developer activity. This is data pulled from the developer report, which is established by the Electric Capital team. And it talks about how year over year, there has been a 27% decrease in developers. And I think the biggest, the thing about recent data about developers that really shocked me was the fact that 25% of all code commits in the past year were done by developers who were new, and they have already left, right? So there's more than 27 million developers in the world, but less than 0.01% of those developers are building in Web3. So Versatus is here to really address that gap and really promote more growth, more application, more growth in even the decentralized application arena to like maintain more utility for the space as a whole. At the end of the day, Versatus is chasing this developer flywheel. We're focused on developers because you need more developers to build these killer dApps that everyone is so focused on. And these killer dApps, yes, they do bring more utility to the Web3 ecosystem, which translates to more users, and through network effects, it onboards more developers and users, and you can kind of see the flywheel there. The problem is that I've noticed is a lot of times projects only focus on, okay, what are the ways that we can improve our product, but that alone won't be able to, sustain your users, right? As you can see in the previous slide, there are, dApps that are considered killer dApps in different ecosystems, but in terms of users and especially developers, there is like a dwindling amount of them. So it's not enough to just focus on how to improve your killer dApp. You need to really focus on how to onboard and sustain developers and have the builders to help build, not just build upon these killer dApps, but also bring more killer dApps, right? So that is what Versatus is doing. And that is all for my short and sweet presentation. If you are interested in connecting with us, you definitely can. Here are our socials. Our developer documents will be released at the end of the year. If you want to get in touch with Andrew Smith, the founder, he's also a fellow developer. So he can definitely resonate with a lot of these problems that he and the rest of the team have identified and are looking to resolve through our P2P web services network. And that's it for today. Thank you so much.